What's happening, everyone? JayShockblast here, and check it out. It is day 730 of Marvel's Avengers 365 times 2. That is 2 years since we started playing this epic mess of a game that we all have loved to hate at times and also really enjoyed. There is just so much to say about 2 years of Marvel's Avengers. On September 4th, 2020, I don't think any of us really knew what we were getting into, but here we are 2 years later, and that is actually pretty incredible because there have been a lot of games that have actually come and gone since then, and here we are still relevant to an extent and still dreaming of what could have been and hoping for what could be. It's kind of insane to think about this, and this is always a game that for as long as I live, I will remember for a variety of reasons, and I think that speaks volumes to the experience of Marvel's Avengers. I had no idea that this was actually going to be a very life-changing game for me, and it's not just the game, it's the culture, it's what we made of it, and I think about where I am now versus where I was 2 years ago today, and I just have this incredibly amazing new group of people that I consider friends. And I think of, the podcast that I'm doing, the after show with Casual Avenger and Sadat the Gamer, two people I would have never known if it weren't for Marvel's Avengers. And then there's Doomkiller HD, who brought us all together. And there's my favorite punching bag, High Ruler, all right? Like, there's so many amazing people we've met along the way. There's Trix Ridiculous, who lives like an hour away from me, and someday we're gonna have dinner together. And just tons and tons of people that our lives would have never crossed if it wasn't for Marvel's Avengers. And why do we play Marvel's Avengers? It's because we love Marvel and we love these characters. It is a massive, massive IP. I've got a dog named Thor, and this is honestly the best Thor game I've ever played. And I think for all the flaws the game has had, the reason that we're still here is because deep down in its core, there is something there that we do still love, and it's maddening. It is the epitome of family, where you're stuck with them. Like, we all have those family members that, like, for better or worse, if they weren't literal blood, we would want nothing to do with. But here we are, and if you really and truly think about it, to be playing a game 2 years later is pretty incredible and is generally reserved for some of the great games of our time. If you honestly have more than 200 hours in this game, you have more than got your money's worth at this point, from what the initial purchase is. If you bought skins after the fact, that's on you. That was extra. You didn't have to do that. Honestly, I don't like defending this game, because even though the game itself has done a lot of things for me, there's a lot of frustration points for me as well, both on a professional level and on just a gameplay level. And it's not a game that I play anywhere near as much as I did a year ago, but I still like to log in, and I still like to go back and play things. When Jane Foster came out, I had so much fun getting back into the game because, again, even though I've done all these missions a million times, it's still a game that I really enjoy when it's working properly. Is it ever going to be everything we ever wanted? No, it's not. And I think we've long since passed the point where we should have known that. And there's always that carrot dangling in front of our face. Oh, Bucky Barnes is coming. Oh, She-Hulk is coming. Oh, we're going to get that Kree invasion. Oh, join in progress. Oh, being able to free roam in the wastelands. All these things are all these dangling carrots that always seem to be so close and yet so far away. Cloning labs is finally going to eventually be a thing. It's a mess. And, I don't know that Crystal Dynamics could have done much more with what they launched. I think we learned a lot about video gaming through COVID. We're always going to remember these COVID times. And, the game was flawed from the beginning. It was supposed to come out, I believe, April of 2020, and then it had to get delayed. and there are meltdowns over it. There are meltdowns over everything because we're bored out of our minds. We're stuck in 2 weeks to slope the curve or whatever it was. It turned into 2 years of just madness. And during that time, it was incredibly difficult for these companies to develop the games. We know this because literally every game has been delayed in some way or capacity. Like everything in all of entertainment is taking longer than it ever used to. And that's not an excuse, it's reality. And I think a lot of times, people lose their patience, and sometimes it's deserved, sometimes it's not. And that's going to always be the story of Marvel's Avengers. There are a lot of irrational people, just looking at it as their source of a punching bag, kind of the way I look at High Ruler. Just somebody that I can just go in and just make fun of. And, then when he suits my liking, I can butter him up a little bit and tell him how I always loved him. And then, once he outlives his usefulness, it's back to telling him, that I'm glad you have COVID and stuff like that. No, I'm kidding. I will admit, I do love that dude in a very platonic way. And, it is a microcosm, though, of what Marvel's Avengers is. Because there's people out there who are using it as their, sounding board. And they're like, it's crazy because, at the end of the day, like High Ruler, I think we all do still love what we got out of Avengers. And whether it's never going to be what we want it to be. That's just the reality. It's just not, okay? And they can sugarcoat it all they want. They can barely even get the permissions to get out some of the content that they're doing. And now we've got this Embracer Group purchase, and we really don't know what's next. I think D23 this Friday is going to really hopefully shed some light on what's going on. That is definitely something that we're all going to be looking at as we look forward to whether or not this is going to make it to a third anniversary. I hope it does. I hope it will. I hope that all the waiting and the planning and the under the hood stuff they've been doing for the last, this whole calendar year, basically, just to basically only put out 2 cookie cutter short missions and Jane Foster, I hope that all is worth it in the end when we can start getting to Cloning Labs over 2 years later, and Winter Soldier, and then allegedly She-Hulk, who may or may not have already been done, and hopefully maybe even capping it off with Captain Marvel and the Kree Invasion. I think the best thing for this game moving forward is to honestly sunset it. The people that are working on the game now are not necessarily the people that developed it. And I think it's very clear that the actual core of the system is flawed. And it would be nice to have them take what they've learned through Marvel's Avengers and start over on a new Marvel project. I do actually believe that Crystal Dynamics can make a very good Marvel's Avengers or Marvel game. I think if we look at the core characters and we look at Thor and the way Thor plays, Thor is incredible. Thor is actually a great game. If this was just a Thor game, I think they did a great job. I would actually trust them to make a Thor solo experience. And I think if you take each character and look at them individually, you'd probably find a way to say the same thing about them. Now, did it work all together? No, because there's things that just were short-sighted, and they've never done anything like this before. That's not an excuse, but at the same time, again, think of how many games have crashed and burned since. We've heard for 2 years that this is Anthem, but you know what? Anthem didn't even make it 6 months, and here we are 2 years in. There have been so many games that have come and gone, and that have just done absolutely nothing. And I'm not saying the way that Crystal Dynamics has handled this has been good or perfect or anything. All right, trust me, I have seen the faults and failures behind the scenes of these devs, and I think for most of them, they are pretty passionate about what they want to do. They do come from a good place. and they do want for things to go well, and I really want that for them. But at the end of the day, there's only so many ways that you can clean up a pig, and I think I'm pretty positive about Marvel's Avengers as a game, and I will always love it for what it gave me. And honestly, once you get past the first 200 hours of playing the game, that's more than you can expect to get from a lot of games, And is it perfect? No. Will it ever be what we always wanted it to be? No. And I think the sooner that you come to terms with that, the sooner you're going to be able to just appreciate it for what it is. Honestly, it is not and never should have been a game that you were able to put 20 hours into a week. Like at a certain point, you have to understand, like Call of Duty, like Battlefield, like NBA 2K, like all these other games, there is going to be a repetition to it, and you're basically going to be playing the same thing over and over again in a different way. Do those multiplayer games like Call of Duty and Fortnite and them, do they handle it a little bit better? Sure, because there is that PvP aspect of it that is always going to make things different. And with Avengers being more of a cooperative game, it is going to be a little bit of the same, because you're playing the same missions. And I wanted more stuff. I wanted everything faster. It didn't happen. It's never going to happen. You are literally looking at quarterly updates if you're lucky, with a bunch of skins built in. And honestly, if you haven't figured that out at this point, that's on you. All right. So what happens from here? I don't know. I do know that I'm so thrilled to have been a part of it, though. And for better or worse, I do believe that this game has been such a positive impact on my life and so many other people's lives, and it goes deeper than the game itself. But as a video game, Marvel's Avengers, I have no shame or problem stating that it is one of my favorite games of all time. I know that it could have been more. And I know it's $1 billion franchise and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they could have done more, but they could have done so much less. And there have been so many worse games that have come out in this time and before. And I hope things go better. And honestly, when it's all over, I think we're going to look back at the memories we made along the way, and we're going to be pretty happy with it, and we're going to miss it. So thank you to everybody that I've met along the way. I'm sorry that I couldn't mention every single content creator and friend by name, but you know who you are, and I just appreciate that we all know of each other's existence because of this beautiful, terrible, flawed, amazing experience and game that we call Marvel's Avengers. So this is our game. This is our experience, and we made this what it is for us, and that's kind of special. You don't get that out of many games. And honestly, as somebody that's been making content on YouTube for 12 years, I can only think of my Battlefield experience and maybe Marvel Heroes Omega as giving me the sense of community I've felt around this game. And as awful as it's been at times, it has been every bit as amazing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that we're sitting here a year from now still talking about Marvel's Avengers. But if not, what a ride. We'll see.